Hello and welcome to State of the Economy. Today we decided to discuss the opening up of India's defense sector to foreign investment and trade. The reason why we are discussing the defense sector is that the sector is one of the key areas where Prime Minister Modi's Make in India project is supposed to work. And in fact, there is a consensus that Make in India, if there's any sector where it will really work, where there is demand, where there is not adequate supply, is India's defense sector. And India is in the process of upgrading its technological prowess, whether in air power or whether in its naval strength. And the next 6 or 7 years are surely going to witness a massive increase in India's capability to manufacture high-tech defense items in India as part of the Make in India, as well as direct imports from abroad to beef up India's overall land, air and sea security framework. To discuss this, we have with us in our studio a defense expert who is also a columnist, Dr. Manoj Joshi. Welcome to our show, Dr. Manoj Joshi. Manoj is also a fellow at the Observer Research Foundation and he wears multiple hats. But today we're going to discuss with Manoj the evolution of India's defense sector over the next 20-30 years. He has adequate institutional memory, so therefore the right person to talk to us on this. So tell us, Manoj, how do you see 2 or 3 recent developments? One, the big initiative to open up India's defense sector to private sector and joint venture manufacturing. 2, the most recent announcement to have 100% foreign investment in modern technology in defense. Earlier, it used to be state-of-the-art technology, so there's a much widening of the scope of imports and of creating joint ventures with private sector, foreign private sector. And third, India slowly sort of breaking free into the technology export control, regimes like MTCR. We become a member of MTCR, trying to become a member of NSG, which will also enable a lot of new technologies to naturally to be imported, right? So how do you see all these developments today?
Well, it's a well-known fact that India has been a large importer, one of the largest importers of weapons and systems, and that this is a consequence of the inability of domestic R&D and domestic industry to fill the gap. Back in the 90s, when APJ Abdul Kalam was the scientific advisor, they had set the target that they said by the year 2000 we will import 30% and make 70%. We know that these percentages are still the same, meaning 70% we import and 30% we make locally. So as a result of this, because the price of weapons and system keeps growing exponentially, we have become, this is now becoming an economic burden on the country. And so this has been hitched on to the Make in India scheme. But the problem is that...
Can I just give the viewers an idea of how much foreign exchange outflow happens? Today our total defense expenditure, capital expenditures of the order about $40 billion?
Yes.
Right, roughly 40. Now, if our GDP doubles in the next 6 years, which it should, 6 to 7 years, so at the current ratio, we'll be spending about $100 billion roughly on defense, right? So there'll be that kind of burden.
You see, but the problem is that there will be much more capable weapons and weapon systems who cost a lot. So that doesn't mean you'll plug the gap.
Yeah.
Weapons is something. That's my other point, that if we are hoping to trigger a manufacturing revolution on the back of defense technologies, I think that's not a particularly good idea.
Okay.
In the sense that it is the civilian manufacturing which should spin off into the defense.
Okay.
In the sense, primacy needs to be given for non-military manufacture. Now, in the case of military, what you do is that, let us say you decide on a project. Your considerations are never economic.
Okay.
Your considerations are strategic. That if this country needs the following, we will have to
You have to get it.
get the following. But that's not how the economy works. Meaning the general economy works on a different principle. There has to be a demand and there has to be a supply and etc.
Has to be some commercial viability also.
Commercial viability must be there. So I'm very leery of the idea that somehow defense is going to rescue you. See, the thing is that defense modernization is a separate issue. As far as I'm concerned, whether we make, whether we import, we need to modernize our armed forces. There are some key modernization areas, gaps, which need to be filled. So I don't really care. Those gaps should be filled. Now, the separate thing is, the question is...
So are you suggesting that we need not depend on the defense sector as a contributor to, major contributor to economic growth? Is that what you're suggesting?
See, the defense sector is never a contributor to economic growth.
Okay.
Meaning, if you look at...
Employment, etc.? No.
No, employment to a limited degree. But I'm just saying, the point I'm making is that if you look at, let us say, telecommunications around the world, the mobile revolution, you see, span off into what is happening in the defense area.
Okay.
So defense took advantage of that.
Advantage of that.
In other places. So likewise, defense sector in India can take advantage of our civilian sector growing. But I'd much rather have the civilian sector grow.
So you talk about a larger ecosystem to grow.
Yes, we need a larger ecosystem to have a flourishing defense industry. But as I said, defense is an area where if there are certain areas you have to manufacture, you need to have. So whether it is economic or not, you will you have to go through that route. Now the thing is that so far a lot of it has been announcements. For example, this business of private sector. The government is still kind of fumbling over, the so-called, the strategic industries, the strategic partners who they would want to appoint. A committee is still looking at it. The problem is you need deep restructuring of the Ministry of Defense, deep restructuring of the public sector units, because right now a lot of the manufacturing is done by nomination. And our public sector units are third class. Meaning, if you look at things like...
So this is a legacy problem.
It's a legacy problem. They're simply no good. Meaning, if you look at Hindustan Aeronautics, Bharat Dynamics, all these companies, the kind of products they come up with are shoddy. And you cannot have a sophisticated defense machine if you are given products from these companies. So there is need to restructure these companies to modernize them in a professional way, break up, like HAL, for example, has prevented the rise of a civil manufacturing industry in the aviation sector.
Isn't that happening now? Many private players
unless
are entering,
until you
right?
break. You see, the problem is that when you're importing, for example, you want to import 100 Airbuses or 200 Boeing aircraft, you get nothing out of it. You may be making some seats or some seat covers or something like that.
You're not doing the critical parts, yeah.
You're not doing the critical parts. And if you're such a big market, surely you should be a partner. You have to think strategically in this area. Countries like China are now on the threshold. They have designed a large military jet, the Y-20, which is like the C-17, and they are trying to move into the area of civil aviation manufacturing.
Yeah. They recently, I think, they rolled out the first 75-seater civilian aircraft.
So what I'm saying is that's the way. And if you look at the Chinese background, you will see that some of these things have been happening over the last 20, 30 years. Okay. You have created the ecosystem. So if you think that the ecosystem will be created in 2 years or by the next election in 2019, I think that's a very foolish way of looking at some of this.
So where do you start, Manoj? This ecosystem is a point well taken. There is also a view that the private sector has begun in small ways to create the ecosystem. For instance, we have a private sector today which makes display avionics for various aircraft, Sukhoi, etc., which we import from Russia. there are private sector entities which are supplying small components, which are middle technology, not very high, but middle end, you know. So do you hope we already have an ecosystem of auto industry in places like Pune,
That's a model.
South. So there's a belief that some of these aircraft or other defense manufacturing units can also come in these regions where there's already, you know, forging, etc., you know, metal forging, and those technologies are developing. Is that the way to go?
The thing is that our system doesn't encourage this. You know, for example, bulletproof vests. There's a company, I believe, in Bangalore which manufactures them for export.
Yeah.
Other countries are taking that. Your own country is not taking it. There are countries that manufacture cabling. Not countries, a company again in the south manufactures excellent cabling. But you will not take, your system is somehow unable to pick up that. So he is an exporter. He exports, and Americans use it, others, the Europeans use it. The Indians don't.
Yeah.
They will go through the same tendering. And so, you know, you've somehow or the other, you've not been able to do that. Now, the example I will give is of China. In the city of Xi'an, there is a Xi'an high-tech industry park.
Okay.
In 1990, it had 30 companies. Today, they have 30,000 companies.
30,000?
Yes, 30,000. It's like, you know, it's equivalent, let's say, of Noida or Greater Noida, something. That whole area, so that's the size of that park. Now, what happens is that every major company that you can think of around the world has a unit there.
And there's a link to technology. So
this is high-tech.
Ecosystem that you're talking about.
So this is, and China has 6 of these. 6 of these high-tech parks. But as I said, they have been built up over the last 20, 30 years. So now they are at the stage. So what are they focusing on today? Some area which is of great interest to us, pharma. The Chinese resent the fact that we Indians import their raw material and try to export our finished products to them and to the world. So as we are known as a big pharma exporter.
Yeah. It's one Make in India story which is a big success.
You know, so the Chinese actually resent it. So they are trying to cut into that market.
Okay.
You know, so they've got their companies strategically located there, encouraged by the government, which wants to go into pharma. So this is the system. You've got to
So
think.
the question is, where is India in building this kind of an ecosystem?
Ecosystem, yes. Meaning you target a certain industries. You have to strategically target. You know, you have to strategically say these are 6 industries that I want at the end of 30 years. I should have a stake there. You see, and so this has to be done at the PMO level or the Niti Aayog. I don't know. See, the problem with Niti Aayog is toothless. If you compare it with the Chinese NDRC, which is a very powerful body.
Yeah.
You know, so we think that we disdain planning, but actually strategic planning is there not just in China, but in big corporations, everyone, they do strategic planning.
Absolutely.
You know, you can't avoid that.
Yeah. So planning should not become a dirty word.
Yes.
Even some of the advanced capitalist economies, they plan their technology evolution over 10 years, 15 years.
You see, also, for example, the government made a group of ministers or empowered group of ministers the dirty word. Now, the fact of the matter is, if you look at the system in China, real power is held by a series of GOMs.
Yeah. Okay.
The so-called leading groups.
Leading groups.
So
what is the equivalent in India? So Manoj, so let's put down on the table what do we have from this government so far on the Defense Make in India initiative. You have a DTTI initiative, right? Defense Trade and Technology.
That's the American, Indo-American.
Indo-American.
But you know, the technologies on offer are pretty trivial there.
Okay.
They're very trivial technologies. There's some anti-tank missile. There's some small drone, the Raven drone. The thing is that there are at least 10 Indian companies that can make that similar kind of drone. But somehow we are not encouraging them. I have a list somewhere of some 30 Indian companies that are into UAVs. Small companies.
Yeah.
But no one's encouraging them.
Okay.
So you are looking DTTI, you're saying the Americans will give us this, but encourage your own guys. The Pakistanis, in fact, have a more, a better UAV setup than we have. So the point is that there must be a champion in the cabinet, meaning in the ministry, who keeps track of these these small units, there, say some guy manufacturing bulletproof vests, some guy manufacturing cables, some guy manufacturing thing. They must have a champion who then, gets the system to encourage them. You see?
But here, Manoj, tell me, the other day I was watching a program, a live CNBC program where awards were being given to small companies, like you said, who make small items for defense industry. And one of the entrepreneurs who got an award, this award was being given away by Jayant Sinha. He was manufacturing a small component, again middle end technology, not high, for the US Army, and he's slowly creating a market in India also for himself. And after receiving the award, he surprised the audience by saying that this 100% opening up of FDI in all modern technologies need not be good for the Indian companies, private companies which are coming up through partnerships. Like many of the companies that you talked about, Indian companies which are making, they'll now simply get taken over by the foreign partner, and all the efforts so far at building an indigenous ecosystem will be wasted.
See,
now, this was his view. Now, this may not be the view of everybody, because there are high-tech items where India needs, which India needs urgently. So you need to have 100% foreigners coming and setting up 100% also, right? So how do you see this ecosystem that you just spoke about? Where do you start? Which are the areas where we should prioritize?
You need a certain balance. There's no doubt about that. As I said, when you're dealing with defense requirements, there is a certain urgency, and so you've got to acquire certain things regardless of time and cost and payoffs. But at the same time, there are areas in which there are processes through which you can encourage. You see, the whole point of offsets was precisely that. The problem is the corruption in the defense sector. You see, there is...
So when you say offset, you mean the indigenization process? Even if you have somebody setting up 100%, some American company coming and setting up fully owned outfit here, they will be under obligation to indigenize over a period of time.
Over a period of time. But as I said, the corruption has been a big issue, because what happens is, at the end of the day, let's say if you say 100% for a unit that is bringing, in quotes, modern technology. Now, there has to be judgment somewhere in the ministry. Is it bringing modern technology, or is it just passing off something with modern technology? Now,
so that definition would lose.
That judgment is where the corruption occurs.
Discretionary powers.
The discretionary powers that are there. And now, of course, this government claims that it has taken care of big corruption, so it's a clean government. But to be very frank, all this will only be known 5 years down the line. Many of these scandals, like Commonwealth Games scandal and all that, they come after the event has passed. So my point is that if you set up, maybe you can set up certain defense technology board, in which there are a couple of people who are well known, who have certain capabilities. But at the same time, you have to ensure that this this board does not become a means of control, in the sense that, right now, the big complaint of the private sector is that the Ministry of Defense production is both the acquirer deals with acquisition, as well as the fact that it also controls the manufacturing establishments. The HAL or whatever. So it's looking into, so it likes to encourage its own companies. That is the HAL or...
So there's a conflict.
Or the BDL. There's a conflict. So one of the things that needs to be done is to take these companies out of that unit. They should be put into and given to Ministry of Industries or someone else. There's no need for them to be... they are government owned. So whether they are run by the defense production or whether they are owned by Ministry of Industries, it should not make a difference.
Not sure.
So I think there are some structural changes that can that would be useful in the process.
So restructuring of the public sector is also needed.
Yes,
big time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because now even today we have reached a situation where foreign partners no longer trust them, and then these the public sector units, as became evident in the Tatra case, develop a vested interest in not developing technology.
Okay.
In the sense, in the case of Tatra, so what in 1986 this begins, and in 1986
You're talking about the Tatra trucks, is it?
Tatra trucks. So the government says, we will import a certain amount of trucks, but we will indigenize this thing. So now what happens with the indigenization? These are assemblies which just simply come from Czechoslovakia via Britain, and some guys get a payoff on that. Now, it is in the interests of the Indian company, the BEML, to carry on that process. So they did no indigenization. Okay. The truck was left-hand drive to start with. It remains left-hand drive.
Okay.
Okay. So there was zero.
So they didn't even do a simple indigenization of shifting the.
But that's what. See, if you look at Sukhoi.
To make it right-hand drive. Huh.
See the Sukhoi
Russian aircraft,
MKI. The HAL will tell you that we are manufacturing this from raw materials. That's all nonsense. They are basically getting sub-assemblies from Russia, putting them together, doing a markup. And the simplest thing is that when you go on the road one day, you look at some of the army trucks going. And look very carefully, you'll see Vehicle Factory Jabalpur written on it. But behind it, there's a Tata logo. Or an Ashok Leyland logo.
So how do you, Manoj, now, it is these very problems which the new policy tries to address. Therefore, there is a strict indigenization schedule for under the offset policy. So do you think that's the way forward?
So you need to be able to break eggs to make the omelette.
But there's a problem with that also, because the private sector says that the defense ministry, which oversees the indigenization process, they are being very strict and they don't allow any flexibility. So if not in 5 years, if it takes say 7 years, so should there be a scope in the agreement to
That's why I'm saying
to rework the offset
that's why I'm saying that
schedule?
this some kind of commission should be there so that you are able to look into these aspects. See, but there's a bigger problem. The bigger problem is the annual budgeting.
Okay.
In a sense, you only appropriate money on a year-to-year basis. So the thing is that the any operator, private or public, what he needs is a multi-year budget. If you say that I'm going to, I need 100 tanks, of which I'll import 5, and the other 95 will be made in India, but I want them to be made over the next 10 years. Okay. Now the problem is that I am only given an appropriation on an annual basis. Okay. If this year my appropriation falls, I say, I had promised to take 10 tanks.
So you're saying a different kind of budgeting is required for
of course
for the defense
so
sector.
If the guy says I can take in 10 tanks, he said this year I can't take 10, I'll only take 4. Huh? Now the private sector guy will be in trouble.
Yeah.
He has invested money, he's bought the steel, he's hired the people.
Yeah.
And he can't do it year on year. Meaning he can't say that, okay, only next year I'll then import, because by the time he imports the steel, the budget will have gone to the year after.
Yeah.
And that year, again, the government says, this year, actually, we had said 10, but this day 8 only.
8 only.
You see?
So essentially what you're saying, Manoj, is that a lot of details and long-term planning in regard to restructuring of the public sector, as well as its interface with the private sector,
Absolutely.
needs to be worked out, which hasn't happened so far. But
that's why I said you have to crack heads.
It's a long-term. It's a 20-year project essentially.
You need a minister who can take tough decisions. And when I say tough decisions, shut down Vehicle Factory Jabalpur. Why do you need it? But you will say, but 40,000 guys will be out of a job. Why are you paying those 40,000 guys? I'm saying all they're doing is assembling Tata and Ashok Leyland trucks.
Yeah.
Okay. Buy them from Tata and Ashok Leyland.
Yeah. Okay.
Why aren't you doing that? But the point is to keep that. Why is the other day we had a workshop in ORF. One of the generals pointed out that the soldiers' jersey, sweater, winter sweater, costs 700 rupees to make in Ludhiana. You can buy it for 700 rupees. Yet the MOD acquired it for 1,600 rupees. But why should, and there's a ordnance factory manufacturing
Why
clothing.
this difference?
Why the difference? Markup, the whole system is, like I told you, the Sukhoi, the Indian-made Sukhoi costs you 70 to 100 crores more than if you import it from Russia.
Okay. So these are
Just purely hopeless business practices, which have absolutely, it's what is called the cost-plus system.
So basically, a huge overhaul and restructuring needs to happen before results start coming in.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manoj Joshi, for talking to us. That's all we have in this edition of State of the Economy. We'll be back with you next week. Thanks for watching.